default. No, that one. There we go. That's the mic that I wanted. And of course, let's go ahead and fix the headset because that's also going to be set to default and no one can actually hear anybody. And we'll go ahead and unmute that. So now I can go ahead and add Blackheart into this video. So here we go. There we
Hello
go.
there, Jim. How you doing?
Not bad, my friend. Not bad. How's your day been?
It's been okay. Just felt a bit long.
Hmm. Understandable about that. But at the same time, kind of be thankful for those long days. Sometimes, days can fly by like that, and you're like, God damn, where did that day fly? But, sometimes those long days could either be extremely boring, which obviously can be really tough, especially if you're like at work. Like, oh my God, this day is drooling. I've had jobs like that
Yeah.
before. It's like, oh my God, get me,
Yeah, I've had them too back
get,
when I was still working.
yeah, get me the hell out of there. Um, and then of course there's, like like programming jobs in the past where it's like, I'm coding and suddenly like, 4 hours passes. Like, oh wait, it's lunchtime already. That kind of thing. So, okay. Let me go and put this on live here. Let's make sure that we are on the right page. There it is. There we go. Okay, so um, today we're going to be going over the convolution reverb because we've already kind of covered the auto volume section. All
Different
the
shapes,
shape and shape.
hollow.
Yeah, we covered
We
through that.
experimented a little bit with that.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that we didn't really experiment too much with was the reverb. That was the one thing that we didn't really experiment with a bit on this, but
Mm,
it's okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm guessing that through the lessons we're probably gonna end up touching on it eventually. And
eventually,
we're doing convolution reverb right now.
yeah. Although, as you know, when we were looking at it the other day, the topic seemed to be covering quite a bit when it comes to um, like really specific audio content that you and I aren't really that familiar with. So we're gonna be like, hey, like we had some trouble with the audio modulation overview, for example. Um,
Yeah, that one was too much for us.
yeah, so I'm getting the same. I feel like I'm getting the same kind of impression out of this, or I'm, just kind of doing like a little once over on this section, and I'm like going, ooh, this looks like it goes right into very nuanced details when it comes to audio, and we don't have, all that information locked away in our brains yet. Not to say
Yeah,
that we can't get there, but it might be a little difficult. So,
a little bit maybe.
yeah. Um, so shall we try to tackle this and see what we can do?
Yeah, let's try. If it's too much, then we skip.
Yeah, then we'll skip it for now. I mean, we may need to come back to it at some point in the future anyway. We might want to be like going, oh, the sound isn't really doing what we kind of want it to do. Like there's something missing. How do we go about doing this? Oh, we need to do
Yeah,
convolution reverb. Ew, okay, we're gonna have to tackle this. You know, um, so that that might happen. You never
yeah,
know. So you never know when you're creating a game for the first time, um, or maybe for the 50th time. You never know what you might need. You know, initially. So
Yeah.
Not always. There's some points where it's like going, hey, um, like when I worked, for one company, um, one of the feedback that they got was that the children were getting lost on where to go on the game, and they didn't know, where to go to next, and they just kept on running around going, uh, where do we need to go, kind of thing. Um, so they had to design something that would allow for um, that would kind of lead them into that next area that they needed to go to. Um, so like I said, you never know what you might face, you know, or you like that idea of like, hey, you need a trail that goes from where the player is right now to the next quest or next game or something like that. If that wasn't, you know, that probably wasn't in their initial ideas in the very beginning. So, they had to
Yeah, it also
add that
depends on
in.
what kind of game you're making as well.
Exactly.
Like, do you want a game that's easy to navigate, or do you want a game that won't hold your hand at all?
Right.
There are still those games being made.
Indeed. Indeed. But the game that that I worked on with a game studio at the time. Um, the game was designed for very young, or it was aimed for very young girls. So
Yeah, in which case the game needs to be hand-holdy.
pretty much, yeah. So um, you know, now obviously anybody you know older, like teenager or adult, might be able to get around perfectly fine. But for a very young you know, for a very young kid, they need that, guide.
When making a game, you gotta take into consideration, okay, to what audience am I aiming this game at?
Indeed, indeed. So if you're looking at, aiming in the game for a very young audience, then you may need those handholds.
Yeah, and it needs to be an easy game to get by.
Well, I don't know if
To an
easy's
extent, that is.
I don't know if easy's the right way of putting it, but um, you need to kind of show them like, hey, this is, um, this could be dangerous, at the very beginning or something like that. Like Super Mario Brothers, that didn't have any hand holding at all in that game, right? Um, in the very beginning, so there wasn't like any like instructions on how to jump or when to jump or how to jump, or anything along those lines. So it's like,
Yeah,
so
the era when tutorials didn't exist.
yeah. So, but the thing was that it still worked. It showed like, hey, here's a consequence for your actions that you did at that particular time. Now, granted, it can be quite brutal in the fact that, like, hey, you just lost a life. Guess what? You only have 2 lives left. Good luck. You know. But here's the thing. As soon as they made that one mistake, they tried not to have it happen again, right? So, or at least, they tried to. Didn't always work that way, but they tried. Um, but if you're talking about like an RPG or something along those lines, where you have individuals going from one part to another part and saying, you know, you need to find this particular person so that they can give you a quest, and you don't tell them where they are. What is a person to do? What is a child to do? They're gonna be
Yeah,
on
you
la
need
la la la
some kind
la.
of hint system.
Yeah.
Like an example I can think of a hint system is Wild Arms 2. You could contact the base and they would tell you the the general area of where you need to go. You need to go to this city in this region,
Mm,
and that it would give you that hint to know where to look.
yeah.
Then it
Well,
was up to you to actually find the person.
yeah. Another way of going about doing it is making sure that it's heavily on Rails, meaning there's no way that you can kind of go off path very easily. You know,
Not unless you break it.
I guess you might say I guess like Pokemon might kind of fit into that a little bit. I think I
That
haven't.
one will be more in quotations because you can technically go it off rails. It just you're just not gonna get very far.
Yeah. Um.
Not without cheats.
Right. So, but I mean, no game designer wants people to use cheats at all. You know, come on.
Yeah, okay. A good example of on rails would be the classic Crash Bandicoot. You only have one way to go. That's it.
Yeah, indeed. So, well, I mean, standard platformers tended to be along those lines for the most part.
Yeah.
So, all right, we kind of went off track. Let's get
A
back
little
into
bit.
our
Yep.
convolution reverb there. So, convolution reverb is an exciting technology that sound designers can use to capture the impulse responses (IRs) of any physical location, such as caves, churches, offices, or hallways, and process audio in real time as though it was being played at that location. Interesting. In effect, the IRs are capturing the reverberations of real locations, thereby allowing a new level of realism and immersion in environmental audio processing. Okay, interesting. Um, I believe, the fact that it's saying, capturing the reverberations is, you know, interesting statement there. So, like the
Hmm.
echoing of like steps in a very echoey chamber, like at a church or an office or something like that. So, unless there's something that like dampens those footsteps, for example, right?
Yeah, it's like distance, direction, and if there's something in between.
Yeah. So, in addition to capturing real-life reverberations, IRs can be derived from any other sound source. Algorithmic reverb output, Foley, VO such as huffs and breaths, contact mics, and so on. IRs can be edited and processed like any other sound. They can be filtered, attenuated, reversed, chopped up, edited, and more. In this way, the convolution reverb feature introduces a whole new dimension of experimentation. Oh boy.
That sounds more like for if you were to make your own sound effects in a way.
In a way, I would imagine that it's like, hey, like you want this scream to kind of echo through the chamber, but maybe you want to change it like in real time so that it will like maybe when it echoes one way, it bounces off the wall and it goes in reverse in the other or something like that, and makes it even more like eerie or something like that, right? You
Hmm.
know, or whatever. So, interesting, interesting. Okay. Convolution reverb provides a data-driven alternative to more traditional algorithmic reverb techniques that simulate reverberation using a combination of delay buffers, filters, and various other DPS topologies. And there's the uh, wording that I'm not very familiar with there. So, also, we need to state that this is, according to 4.27, a beta feature. So it might not work out exactly as intended. So, so are we going to be putting it in?
We don't know. It'll depend on what we make.
Yeah, exactly. But we might need to be very cautious if we do. So, seeing that it is in beta. Now, it might be perfectly, like Unreal Engine 5 might have it perfectly enabled and it's working perfectly fine on 5, but obviously we can't do that yet. So
I can't do that one.
well, because you can't do it, I can't do it. I'm not going to be stepping up into Unreal Engine 5 without you, if we're trying to build a game together, my friend. So, you know, and when I say we, I mean we can't do that. So, you know, I'm not gonna do that because we're gonna have problems if I try to do Unreal Engine 5 and you can't do that, then we're gonna come up into um, issues at runtime, or I put in something that works for 5 but doesn't work for 4, and therefore it causes you problems. We can't have that kind of
Yeah, I probably
difference.
wouldn't even be able to open the file.
Probably. Well, I would imagine a Engine 5 can, but an Engine 4.27 opening a 5, it'll
No.
probably have some difficulties. If not,
If you open a engine 4.27, they'll probably update the files.
yeah, it might try to convert it to 4.27, and therefore it might not recognize any like new functions that might have been added in 5. It might go, what kind of functions are you trying to add here? And suddenly, you know, there, now you have like hundreds of errors on your code that was designed in 5, and 4.27 it doesn't really work that way. So it's better to just stick with the same engine for everybody, and therefore not have any issues along those lines. So, all right, moving on. So, convolution is a mathematical operation like any other mathematical operation. Okay. You don't say. It's a mathematical operation. Okay, that's great. Like any other mathematical operation.
How so?
You already stated that it's a mathematical operation. It's like, okay, that's enough. Addition, subtraction, integration, dot products or cross products, to name a few. In the same way that dot products and cross products can be thought of as different ways to multiply vectors or signals, convolution is a third way to think of vector transformation. Interesting. As with cross products, convoluting two signals results in a third signal. Gotcha. Okay. Now, do you understand what it means by? Well, I mean, obviously, you don't. You know what addition, subtraction. I'm assuming
Yes.
integration.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm also assuming dot products and cross products.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure. Now, if anybody is like watching this right now and they're like going, "What the hell are you talking about by dot products and cross products?" You're welcome to ask if you're not sure. Okay. Um, this is a form of mathematics that programming uses to get jobs done faster. So uh, so just kind of bear that in mind. For those of you that are like on, I don't need math to program. Right there,
Yeah, you
guys.
say that.
you know, if you're trying to build a game, you just might. So you know, don't don't shortcut on your mathematics if you want to program. So, okay, without getting overly involved in complex mathematics, too late. The simplest way to conceptualize convolution is to consider every sample of the input signal, yt, as the sum of weights, GT as the time-shifted input signal. Wait. Okay, there's a slight difference here. Every sample of the output signal, YT, as the sum of weights, which is GT, of the time-shifted input signal, which is XT. Thanks. Okay. In this way, you can think of convolution as a kind of blurring operator. So, interesting. So, I guess if you're for convolution reverb, you're basically taking the potential of two like reverb signals, kind of mashing it together to get like one reverb signal out of it.
Definitely
Um,
sounds that way.
or maybe there, maybe instead of, um, or maybe the idea of taking two audio signals together creates a convolution reverb. But I have a funny feeling that it's kind of intentionally like needing a reverb in that operation to begin with. It can't be just a straight audio signal. It has to be more of well, I mean, it's still an audio signal, but you need to have the reverb added to it um,
Mm.
to get the convolution operation. But again, I'm not 100% sure on this. That's the impression that I'm getting right at this moment in time. What about yourself? What do you feel?
Mm. I guess it would depend on the audio as well. I'm no audio engineer or anything.
Neither am I. I'm just kind of giving an educated guess at this point. So, but that's what I'm kind of leaning towards right at this moment in time. So we'll see. All right, we move on. So far, it's okay. it hasn't
Mm.
it hasn't gone to a point where we're like, or I'm going. Where's my brain has exploded. You know, convolution audio. So convolution has a wide variety of applications in a large number of fields, including statistics, okay, machine learning, and graphics rendering. Okay, so convolution as a word, sure, okay. And in audio, convolution is a way to process audio signals through IRs, which are the impulse responses, um, which represent real-world systems that would otherwise be impossible to model due to their complexity. I mean, sure, you know, obviously, it can be really difficult to try to simulate real life like completely in a game, right? So,
No,
you might have some
you can
little,
only simulate up to a certain extent.
yeah, to a certain extent, but I mean, as you get further and further along, better graphics, better
As
responses.
technology evolves, pretty
Yeah,
much.
as technology evolves, it'll be, you know, it might get to that point where, as you're playing a game, it looks so real that your brain is actually thinking, oh my gosh, I could die at this particular time, you know. Which, I mean, you still have those kind of impulses even when you're even when you're like playing a game and, like outside of like virtual reality, right? Like, I know um, if there's fall damage, for example, right? And I'm trying to like build something like in like say Minecraft, right? I'm trying to build something high up in the sky, right? and I'm like going, ooh, and I'm needing to be very careful as to how I'm building something, and suddenly you drop, right? You fall off. You know, every time that kind of happens to me, I can kind of feel like a little like a pit of my stomach kind of clenching in a sense that oh no, kind of thing, and splat, you're dead.
Especially if you're afraid of heights.
That too, especially if you're like really nervous about that. But I mean, you have to be like in full on VR, you know,
Oh,
and
I've seen people like playing Mirror's Edge, uh, that are afraid of heights, and they had a hard time looking down.
I mean that is true. There's a lot of people that get that have a absolute fear of like the oceans and are absolutely terrified of the game Subnautica because it triggers um it triggers that fear. So,
Yep.
and that's not even in VR either.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, you can play Subnautica in VR, or at least I believe you can.
I think you need your modder to do that.
Yeah. But um, there's people that have have that effect to them. Um, so I mean, there are games that get so close to it that you're like, it still triggers you in some regards along those lines, but um, like we haven't gotten to a point where you go into a game, and if you're like shooting a gun, it will literally put, you know, bullet holes in you in real life. It's not that bad. It hasn't gotten to that point.
No.
That would be really scary if that did. Um, a la Sword Art Online. Uh, but um, but yeah. If the audio signal is FT and our weight GT is the IR that represents the complex system to be modded, then the output XT is what the audio signal would be if there were fed through a system. Um, wait. Hmm. They kind of changed their labels here a little bit, and that kind of threw me off a bit because they're talking about the input audio signal FT, which I thought their input signal before was XT.
It
So,
was, yes.
so are they saying that XT is the time shifted input signal and FT is the input audio signal? I
Probably choose separate things that we're not aware of.
maybe, or maybe this part with the FT and GT equaling XT is the time shifted input signal, maybe. Like like FT and GT here is a combination that will eventually go into the time shifted input signal above, maybe? I don't know. Si
Well, but that sounds fit, maybe.
I mean, it's the only thing that I can think of why they maybe did it that way, but I don't know. It feels a little off that they're using FT and GT, or they're using GT and XT here, but they kind of and obviously GT is still kind of remaining as the weights, which is fine. Um, but they're changing XT to be output down below, but an input up above. So it's like a little odd there, but maybe they'll explain a little bit later. So
Hopefully.
hopefully. Competition considerations. Convolution is fundamentally an expensive mathematical operation. Understandable that. Every element in the input signal, FT, is multiplied by every element in the convolving signal, GT. GT was weight, so are they changing it again?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And added together to produce every element in the output signal, XT. For large IRs, which represent large reverberation spaces, this gets very expensive. Performing the convolution operation directly is usually too costly for a real-time scenario. Luckily, there is a symmetry that can be taken advantage of that speeds up convolution significantly. Convolving two signals in the time domain is identical to multiplying signals in the frequency domain. The frequency domain of a signal can be produced by using the fast Fourier transform, FFT. I have heard of that before. I'm not remembering exactly what it was all about, but um, we'll move on. Like I've heard of that before. I just can't remember like where exactly I heard that. So it's been a while. I don't know if you're familiar with it yourself at all.
It rings a bell, but I'm not entirely sure. Really, I
Yeah.
don't know if I've actually heard about it.
The fast Fourier transform, as the name would suggest, is fast. Really, you don't say. Um, by doing this step for the input signal and the IR, convolution reverb can be computed on the CPU in real time. Take care, however, as it is still usually more expensive than traditional algorithmic reverbs. So, alright. So, um, yeah, I think the fast Fourier transform is a mathematical operation, I think. It's just it's a certain calculation that you have to um, I can't remember. I think it might be like a matrix based um, calculation, but I'm not. It's like right there. I'm like, oh, no, Jesus! It's like I, I've heard it, I've seen it, but I just can't put my finger on it right at the moment. So it's like, god damn it. Oh well. With new CPU capabilities and hardware acceleration of convolution operations, convolution reverb is becoming a more viable option in game audio. In this way, convolution reverb has been traditionally a next-gen audio technology, which I mean makes sense. Obviously, if you're talking about something that requires a lot of calculations, a lot of mathematics, that
Then the
take
CPU would be the dominant one there.
right. But that if that's taking up the majority of your processing power, then it leaves nothing for handling anything else. So, you're trying to run along and suddenly like it stops or glitches or something like that to wait for like a convolution reverb to catch up with it or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So, so I can understand why, hey, maybe not necessarily use it because you're going to be basically killing your CPU and hardware to try to involve it. So, which again makes sense. So, how to use the convolution reverb? Enable the synthesis and DSP effects plugin. Okay. This plugin contains a variety of optional synthesis and DSP capabilities. Okay, what is DSP? You're saying DSP effects. Okay, what is DSP? You're referencing it, but you're not telling me exactly what it is there, guys. Um, but whatever, we move on. Um, with the plugin enabled, right-click any imported sound wave in the content browser and select Create Impulse Response. Okay. This creates an impulse response from the selected sound wave. In this way, any sound wave could become the IR for the convolution reverb algorithm. You can convolve with any sound. Okay. This will create a new asset with the name appended by IR. Okay, interesting. Um, this asset contains some data that will be used by the convolution reverb effect, as well as a normalization value that can be set for each impulse response. To set the volume normalization value for any individual audio impulse response asset, open the details panel of the audio impulse response. Um, I'm not quite sure. Um, you know, often, you hear about normalization. Um, and unfortunately, I'm not quite sure what normalization kind of implies when it comes to audio. Like, how do you
Mm,
normalize, have a normalization of an audio? That
let me have a quick look at it.
so that's where I'm kind of, this particular paragraph here isn't really setting well with me right at this moment in time because I'm not quite sure exactly um, what they're trying to do in that particular paragraph. So, um, um, okay, the normalization volume dB is a decibel attenuation that can be applied to any convolution effect that is actively using this impulse response. This provides an easy way to achieve equal loudness between various impulse responses. Okay. To use the convolution reverb effect, create an instance in the content browser. Open the details panel for the convolution reverb effect and set up the impulse response asset as the one to use. Other parameters include surround rear channel bleed in dB, how many decibels of the output of the convolution effect to send to rear channels in a surround sound environment. Values of -60 or less will be considered silent. So, um, so if someone has surround sound speakers, for their game, which that's impressive. Um,
An overkill.
hey, if you um, like if you're playing a game in VR, you kind of want like maybe sounds like all the way around you, kind of thing, right? Through the speaker systems. So, you know, or potentially, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I found a description of audio normalization if you want to hear it.
Okay.
Audio normalization is the application of constant amount of gain to an audio recording to bring the amplitude to a target level, the norm. Because the same amount of gain is applied across the entire recording, the signal to noise ratio and relative dynamics are unchanged. Normalization is one of the functions commonly provided by a digital audio workstation. Two principal types of audio normalization exist. Peak normalization adjusts the recording based on the highest signal level present in the recording. Loudness normalization adjusts the recording based on the perceived loudness. Normalization differs from dynamic range compression, which applies varying levels of gain over a recording to fit the level within a minimum or maximum range. Normalization adjusts the gain by a constant value across the entire recording. So it's this form an audio editor pretty much because you're trying to control maybe how loud something is or its filters of it to like clean up the noise.
Okay. This asset contains some data that will be used by the convolution reverb effect as well as a normalization value that can be set for each impulse response. To set the volume normalization value for an individual audio impulse response asset, open the details panel. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having a hard time kind of grasping onto that personally. I don't know if you are as well, but I mean, if you're seeing it a little bit better than I am, then that's fantastic. If you're having just as much trouble as I am, then yeah.
So probably on the loudness, I kind of maybe understand a bit since if you perceive it maybe a little too loud, normalization would be to edit that audio to a volume that's neither too loud nor too low. As for the peak one, that's the one I'm probably struggling a bit since I don't understand much about audio waves. I think that's where it's touching in.
I mean, um,
It's talking about the signal of the audio, which is normally represented by waves.
right. Well, I mean,
Just like it's shown on the start of the how to use reverb, you have like an image there that's kind of like audio waves right there. The peak
hmm
would be modifying that pretty much. Those waves.
yeah. Question
That
is,
generally determines how an audio sounds, like I guess.
yeah,
From what little I know about audio.
what I'm kind of wondering about is how exactly does it modify the audio waves? Now, obviously, whenever you're looking at an audio wave, you consider it like, any like a standard like sine wave, cosine wave, whatever you want to kind of consider it, like, just think of it like a sine wave, right? It has the ups, it goes down, and comes right back up again. And typically you have it, at the same, if you're trying to do like the same loudness, for example, you keep the wave, constant, right? It's,
Yeah, peak doesn't alter loudness according to this.
yeah,
Looking at the peak normalization and loudness normalization, peak normalization doesn't care about the loudness. It just care about the wave.
yeah, um,
The loudness is not the same as the frequency of the of the sound.
yeah, um, you know, normally you have like the height of the wave. I believe that's typically regarded as like how like loud an audio is typically, from what I understand. And the width of the sine wave kind of determines how often that sound um is kind of played, or it's how often you kind of hear it for the most part. Um, like especially if it's like something that um has like a long duration or something like that, or well, maybe not necessarily long duration. Um, you have something that is um like if you hit like a like a bell or something like that, and you hear that kind of, then that length might kind of change or whatnot. I don't know. I'm putting a lot of thought power into this one.
Mhm.
But all right, well, I'm yeah, I'm pretty much kind of gone on that, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like this falls more on someone that knows how to edit audio,
Yeah,
and that is not much of our field.
yeah. But to be honest, there really isn't that much more on this, which is good.
Yeah.
So I feel like we might have learned enough of it for the most part that we can probably just go ahead and move on. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
there's some here that is going into more nuanced, you know, like the other parameters include like the inverse rear channel bleed phase. It's like, okay, you're going
Yeah.
into like really detailed stuff that I'm probably not going to be able to really handle myself. We'd probably want to
No.
have someone that actually knows a little bit more about sound design to get into
Yeah.
that. I mean, if necessary, we will throw that hat on if we need to, but um, I have a funny feeling that that's going to be really tough to really do what we kind of need it to do for the most part, if we have to use it,
Yeah.
which right now, I don't think that we're going to be needing to use it right away. At least
No.
not for the first build. Who knows what happens in the future though. Okay. But I could see the possibility of us maybe needing to do something like that if we want to get into like needing to use like different, like if we're having like reverbs like bouncing off of everything, like yeah, like footsteps, like swords clanking with each other, music being played inside the room at the same time. You're talking about like multiple different audios that might have like reverbs going on at the same time, and you might have potential convolution out of all that. So maybe.
Mm, maybe.
um, but yeah, I feel we're probably not going to be touching that too much,
Yeah.
if at
If we
all.
happen to have to need to, probably rather look at a video and someone explaining it better than this.
Yeah. So and even then, unfortunately, sometimes the video doesn't necessarily explain very well. They basically say, sometimes they basically say, "Hey, if you want this to happen, just click here, and there you go." That's that. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
you're you're
like
good.
someone
And
that
it's like,
takes time to explain things. Like, what is okay? We raise this because it does this, and this is what it is. Like, I
yeah,
would look for a video with a bit of detail in there.
yeah, indeed, indeed. I appreciate when someone can kind of explain why you want to go about doing something in that regard instead of just saying, "This is what you do. There you go. You're done.
Yeah.
Get out of my
Here it
video," or
did
something.
not explain.
It's like,
This did not explain what DSP effects is. What is DSP, mind you? What does that stand for? Like, this tutorial didn't do that. Like, maybe a video might explain that what DSP effect is.
right. Um, but I mean, if you look at the synthesis and DSP effects, I mean, you're basically looking at the sound, different sound waves there. So so um, and there's a lot of different sound waves going on at the same time in that image that they're showing there, right?
Yeah.
So
This is how it looks like, and though when I kind of like opened it to see if it was even this was already enabled by default. So we don't. I don't know why this is it. I don't know why it doesn't say here that it's enabled by default on certain versions.
well, I mean, if you go with a blank project, it might not necessarily be enabled. So they're just basically saying, hey, if you want this, you're gonna need to make sure that it's enabled. So you know, if you're using a blank project, like nothing is there, no starter content, nothing, then it might not necessarily be enabled. But um, but yeah. Oh yeah, my friend. Looks like we are kind of out of time on this. We're gonna be,
Fortunately, we went through the whole thing.
yeah. But I mean, we're gonna be moving on to how to import audio, which I mean shouldn't be.
I think it's the same as when you import an asset or a geometry, textures, or whatever.
Yeah,
It
I
definitely looks like it's the same. Yeah, it's the same deal.
yeah. Although I am kind of interested in. I mean, there's talking about referencing the multi-channel audio extension table, which is interesting.
That is, if the
Um,
sound effect itself has multi channels.
yeah. So there's that. Um, Importing multi-channel audio. So that's interesting. Aha, okay. I see what that's all about. Um, so I guess the multi-channel has the potential of being used in like surround sound, I guess. Just based off of the naming conventions that they use, maybe.
Maybe.
Just a educated guess, but you know. But to be honest, I don't. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm going, you know what? Probably don't really need to cover this all that much. I mean, obviously, if we do need to import audio, then we can try to go about doing that. But at the same time, um, we might. I mean, we can probably cover that, when we absolutely need to. Which we will later on. If we want to add some like default, you know, audio to our game, like some grunts or some sword clashes, or maybe we need to add in some um, um, non-copyrighted music or something like that, then obviously we're gonna need to go about doing that. But I mean, like you said, it doesn't look like it's gonna be that hard, so I feel like we could probably go ahead and skip that.
Yeah.
Okay. What about MIDI and Unreal Engine? It's apparently beta only and apparently advanced, according
Oh,
to
is
them.
this the advanced one? I don't even know what MIDI stands for.
Um, MIDI is Musical Instrument Digital Interface, meaning that um, back in the day, you obviously um, trying to put like real sound, like a trumpet playing or something like that, into a game, takes up a lot of space.
Mm.
would take up a lot of the amount of data for taking in a song that you're actually using with and like a real orchestra would require a lot to even consider doing that, right? So basically, what MIDI was kind of meant to be was it was try to mimic instruments as best as it could while trying to um, save overall space on that. So you can have um, so instead of having like the real song that you're hearing, like like you're saying, think of Final Fantasy. You played Final Fantasy VII, right?
Yep.
Okay. The um the very song at the very end, right? One Winged Angel.
Yep.
Um, Now I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they used actual live orchestra for that, or did they? Oh, I can't remember.
Not exactly. Some of it was for computer. Well, for the people, they recorded only a few people and just copied their voices to make it sound like a full-on orchestra.
Right. So I mean, they were trying to save as much space as they possibly could for the disc itself, right? Um, but obviously they had to try to imitate, the music at the very end there, the flutes, the trumpets, the percussion, all that kind of jazz. They had to kind of mimic that, digitally, right? So that's kind of what MIDI is all about. Nowadays, they don't really give a damn. They'll put a full-on soundtrack. I mean, GTA 5 is putting in real live songs in there that you
Yeah,
get
they'll
copyrighted
just
on.
pay
So,
someone to let them use their copyrighted material.
right, right, right. But what I'm saying is that they're using actual audio now, whereas back then it was more MIDI to try to mimic the sounds. Um, so like um pick a go to YouTube, you know, um, and then pick any kind of song that you might be interested in, um, that you might be kind of interested in, right? So, like you know, say One Winged Angels, right? And then if you put in MIDI, you might actually hear um, someone's rendition of, One Winged Angel just using MIDI to try to, mimic that sound effect, you know. Um, Now, obviously, I would not play that sound over your stream because you will get hit with copyright for it.
Yeah.
Because I tried to do that once. I actually was like um, uh, I was, let's see, I was on Twitch at the time, and I think I had just gotten my affiliate status, and I wanted to do a full-on celebration of it. I was like going, "Hey, I got the affiliate, yay!" kind of thing. So I was trying to do affiliate celebration, and at the very beginning, I was kind of waiting for people to kind of come on in and join me with the celebration and blah blah blah. So I did like a little marbles set, and then while playing marbles, I was like going, okay, I'll just have some music. So at first I was like going, boy, I would really love to do the you know celebration by Kool and the Gang. If you've heard of that song before. You know, a celebration is in, kind of thing, right?
Familiar? Yeah.
If you've heard of that song. Um, but I knew that I couldn't play that song directly, okay, because I was like on I would definitely get copyright striked if I tried to play that, right? So I tried to do like, hey, maybe I'll do like a MIDI version of it, and I just had it play on loop, you know, MIDI cool and again celebration, blah blah blah, on that stream for as long as I wanted to for the marbles before I got into the gameplay, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
that MIDI got copyright claimed. You're playing Cool in the Gang Celebration, and we're claiming that. It's like, okay. So even that will, um, that isn't possible. you know. So, okay. But yeah, we can cover the MIDI and Unreal Engine. It looks like they're talking about how they will allow for you to like put in either like a MIDI player or put in a MIDI song into it or something like that. I don't know. Well,
I don't know.
we'll cover it.
We'll have to be careful anyways if it's just in case.
Yeah, but well, I mean, obviously we're not going to be playing any kind of you know sounds in the in the tutorial, um, but still, it's one of those things where it's like if we're making our own songs, for example, and we don't want to have like a huge amount of space taken up by audio, then MIDI is probably going to be the way to go for us.
Yeah.
Because it just tries to mimic, actual sounds. Um, so, um, so if you're not familiar with MIDI, then I would recommend listening to a song or something like that in MIDI to kind of get an idea of it.
I
Um,
think I've heard a few actually. I think someone used some MIDI like software where they made their own version of the Kung Fu Panda theme songs.
mhm. Yeah.
It was showing the tracks it was going through at what instrument was being replicated through the software.
Mhm. That's that's pretty much what MIDI is all about. But I mean, for those of you that are like watching and you don't know what MIDI is, I mean, this just simply just type up MIDI songs in YouTube or something like that, and there's probably someone that has created something, that you can kind of listen to, and you know, people try to recreate the song as best as they can through MIDI, so obviously it's not the exact copy of it, because probably not gonna have singing at all. um, so, but they try to do their best, you know, with the overall song. So, all right, man, let's get out of here. You go get yourself
Mm,
something to eat. I'm gonna do
yeah,
some video uploads and
yeah.
Warframe later on tonight. What are you tackling tonight?
I'm gonna continue the Homeworld 2 remastered.
Okay.
I feel like if I remember the name correctly, I'm about halfway.
Oh wow, halfway already? Didn't you only play that like one night?
Yep. The only hard level of that one that I can remember was level 3. But the others, they're not that hard. At least
Okay.
not with the strategies I have been using.
Okay. Okay. Um, that I
I do
that's
consider Homeworld 2 easier than Homeworld 1.
okay. I
I don't know
mean,
if you played it yet.
I haven't played Homeworld 2.
Hmm.
I only had Homeworld 1 and I didn't finish Homeworld 1. So at some point in time, I do really want to go back to it, although I don't think I actually own it myself. At
Well,
least
it
not
was
on,
for free on Epic at one time, the remaster edition, so you might actually have it if you picked it up from there.
but I didn't. Unless they still have it available for free, which
No.
probably not. Um, then no, I did not. You know, I, at one point in time, I was kind of going to Epic to go like, oh, hey, free game, yay, pick that up. Um, but I haven't really done that too much lately because at the same time, I'm like going, oh, this game looks really interesting. I'd really like to take it, but at the same time, I hear about how the devs, are also kind of, in a sense, losing money that way as well. Or, ever since the Unity came out, that whole Unity debacle,
Yeah.
um, how these devs, they sell licensing to like Epic Games, and Epic Games are like, or Epic Games are like going, hey, we want to put your game out on as a free game, kind of a thing. Are you willing to do that? And Epic would like pay them a certain amount of money in order to do that, but the typically,
Yeah.
the
And also
cost,
the inspiration that games published on Epic made in the Unreal don't have to pay the license anymore.
yeah,
They also use that as a selling point.
yeah. But it's like, typically the amount of downloads that happen during those free game, you know, is like a lot. And they're like going, man, I really wish I could get, the amount of money that, I would have gotten if I, kept it at that price. you know, like typically like if they didn't go for the license with Epic, they probably would have gotten a lot more money if they didn't do that. Um, but at the same time, um, their game might not have reached a large audience either. So um, it's one of those things where it's like, you could go that way and you'd have a lot of people kind of getting to see who you are as developers, especially as indie developers, right? You get more eyes on you as an indie developer. So now you can kind of say, hey, you know, we're the developers of this game that had, this million downloads, right? You could do that. Um, and hopefully your next game like takes off and, sells a lot of stuff. But at the same time, you're losing all that potential income as well. But, you know, like if you might get like a million downloads from Epic Games for the free, right? But in reality, if they didn't do that, you might have only reached like maybe 1,000 normally, maybe, kind of thing.
Maybe.
It's like it's one of those double-edged swords. It's like, how do you get eyes on your game, right? Now, there are some content creators out there that actually focus on indie games. They'll say like, "Hey, here's a new indie game that just came out. We're gonna play it." Or we ask them for permission to play the game, on our channel, and here's the game, blah blah blah, right? And that's great. That's giving highlights to the end games, right? But more often than not, a lot of people just kind of ignore them for the most part. They go for the AAA games because I mean they're AAA. They have the advertising to kind of boost them up, right? So
Mhm.
like Alan Wake, for example. you know, But yeah,
Because
it's
Alan Wake they used the 1 week free to promote the sequel.
hmm
They're like, the sequel is coming. Here you have the first and American Nightmare available for free to catch up to it.
yeah. But yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, nowadays I'm like going, ooh, should I really, and in some ways it's like, man, I really want to have this game, but at the same time it sucks for the developer too. So, um, but at the same time, hey, I don't have, I don't have, especially don't have a disposable income now. Um, but I mean, when I was working, I didn't have all the funds in the world to justify buying games at full price sometimes. So like the
Yeah.
Steam summer sale, winter sale, so on and so forth. Those I saved a lot of money, purchasing games through those sales, but kind of sucks for the developers of those games too. So I mean, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Um, when we get to that point of you know putting out our own games, then we're gonna have to kind of consider that ourselves. You know, like if Steam comes up to us and says, "Hey," or, like if we're selling a game on Steam, if we're selling a game for Steam, like "Hey, our game is 99 cents on Steam" or something like that. What happens if Steam comes to us and says, "Hey, uh, are you willing to put your game up for sale?" You know, are we gonna do that? Something for us to kind of consider later on.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, the more we get, the more we have the game bought, then the better off we are, right? But
Yeah.
um, yeah. So in some ways, it's like when do we risk a little bit of money for more eyes on it? So that's the thing. That's what we're gonna have to kind of weigh upon. But that's later. We're
Yeah.
not there yet.
No, not there yet.
Okay. So you get out of here, my friend. You go
Yep.
get
Yep.
yourself
Sounds
something
good.
to eat, and I'll catch you later.
Right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, and that's where we're gonna go ahead and end our Unreal. So, hopefully you enjoyed that. Feel free to check out our other playlists, our continued content with the Unreal Engine learning tutorials and the like. You know, and like I said, we will eventually get to a point where Blackheart and I, and maybe others, maybe who knows, will join in to kind of create something ourselves later. But for right now, we're gonna be it's just the two of us, and obviously, um, if someone does want to come on in, then hey, just be aware. Right now, no one's getting paid. No one's getting paid with this, so this is our own endeavor, our own process to get to a point where we might be able to sell something. So, and then we might start making a little money, but I kind of doubt that we're going to be able to do much with that right at this point. So yeah. Um, so that's gonna be it for today. So again, help us out with the YouTube algorithm. That would be fantastic. Go check out Blackheart Games on YouTube for his content. Check us out while streaming. And yeah, that's gonna be it. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully I catch you next time. Till then, take care. Have a good night. Stay healthy, stay safe. And I'll catch you strangers next time.